and that at the end of the day we are carbon negative right now with aspirations and commitment to remain carbon neutral. We have 70% forest cover, but also, what does that mean? What are the sacrifices the community and the people and the country is doing to maintain that? Because it is a beautiful story to tell, but it comes with the challenges that are people, or the sacrifices that are forefathers, or people before us and going forward, that we have to make to maintain that.
Hi everyone, welcome to Now Boarding, a new travel podcast by me, Payal Nayar. This show aims at creating awareness about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible travel, and a lot more. We will cover stories and journeys of people who are ecotourism specialists and those who are leaders in their field. We will also be talking to people who have had unique travel experiences, remarkable conceptual places to stay, unexplored cultures, and ancient histories of various towns and cities around the world. Join me in this journey of knowing more about travel. Get inspired to see the world and discover your inner self. Hi everyone, today I am in conversation, I should say finally, with Thinley Choudhary. Thinley is a social entrepreneur. She's a consultant. She's working within the intersection of climate action, entrepreneurship, and youth and women engagement. And Thinley is also the CEO and co-founder of Bhutan Tours and Travels in Bhutan. And she's not in Bhutan at the moment. She's in Washington, D.C., and that's where we're having this conversation. Well, I'm in Singapore and she's in DC. So thank you so much, Thinley. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, but finally we've managed to connect. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you, Payal, and thank you for your patience. I know we've been trying to schedule this call, but with your travel and my travel, we've finally come here. So I'm glad
I know it's finally happened. Yeah, absolutely. So Thinley, can we just start a little bit, so that the listeners were able to get a bit of a background on you and what led you to become a social entrepreneur and a climate consultant?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I initially started off my professional career in international development. So right after my college, I went to school in the US. I studied economics undergraduate. And right after that, I came home back to Bhutan and I worked for the UN, the World Food Program. And I think it was through there that I was able to apply a lot of what I learned in my classroom in real life practice. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And after my UN stint, I went to do my master's in the US again, came back. But when I came back, I enjoyed working in an international organization, but I could also see the limitation in terms of how much they can do in the field. So I decided then instead to start a nonprofit organization that works with communities to build community library and resource centers. And it was something that I felt there was a gap and met need in terms of setting up libraries in the community, which is culturally an alien concept for rural communities in Bhutan because we are traditional and oral society. But the value of education and the value of literacy and able to read and imagine I saw it as very important because that influenced a lot of my aspiration as a little girl in Bhutan, and also the reason why I sought to go beyond Bhutan in terms of my own education and learning journey. So I started Read and I was in the nonprofit sector for a while. Up to 6 years, I built up the organization, but also again, I saw the limitation in terms of always having to fundraise and always having to, have the challenge of asking for money and then trying to say your work is good enough for people to give you money. So over the period of time, I evolved into the space of social entrepreneurship because I felt it combined the two good aspects of two sectors of nonprofit and for-profit, and also the whole aspect of financial sustainability. So after Read, I transitioned myself out. Read still works, still doing very good work in Bhutan. I sit on the board And then I was with Acumen Fund based out of New York. They are a pioneer in impact investment and social entrepreneurship. So I wanted to learn firsthand as well because I read up a lot. Literature was fairly new back then. It's still new, but it's going more mainstream. But through Acumen, I was able to learn a lot of hands-on experience as well as a lot of the practices that is happening around in that field. And yeah, so since then I've transitioned again out from Acumen, and now I work on my own. And the travel company that you spoke about, Bhutan Tours and Travels, is also a sort of a social enterprise. I try and design my travel company as a travel with a purpose. So I design journeys and experiences around an issue, whether it is environmental education or whether it is leadership or whether it is students' experience in living and working with communities in a different country than theirs, whether it's donor education. So I design journeys around experiences for a purpose of learning and exploration. So anyhow, long story short, that's how I've evolved over the years in terms of my journey and arrival and how I manifest right now as a social entrepreneur and consultant. And it really is just, and I'm also very lucky, and I know that I'm privileged to be able to work for myself and to evolve over the years to do this. I'm grateful, yeah.
So for those who don't really understand who a social entrepreneur is, if you could just go, I mean, you have kind of highlighted it a little bit, but if you could just go a little more in detail.
Well, social entrepreneurship, I think, is a business with a purpose, or, and let's just say an event or a venture with a purpose, or it's going beyond just making profit. It is looking at social impact, it's looking at environmental impact, it's looking at governance. And in terms of what one can do to become a social entrepreneurship, the first thing I always say is look at where there's a gap, where there's a problem, where there's a need. Because if your idea or your business venture or your social enterprise does not cater to a need and a service in the community that you serve, then it's just not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be your passion idea or your project idea that just either sits in your head or doesn't go beyond a certain number of days. So it has to be relevant to the society that you serve, but of course it has to be aligned with your own values and passion as well. So first step is to find a problem, find a need that is not being met, and it is of importance, of value to the community you're in. And I think beyond that is to find your network. I work with a number of young entrepreneurs or startups in Bhutan. And I always say, if you can, find a co-founder, because the entrepreneurship journey is very lonely. Not only lonely, it's also very tough. Yeah. So to have a friend along who's aligned with you always helps. Yeah. And then starts the journey of, fundraising, setting up the business, so on and so forth. But yeah, I think that would be the starting point, is to find something that is not being met, that is of value to you and to the community that you serve.
If you could just highlight some of the sustainability related impact that you have been able to create with your experience, whether it's through your social entrepreneurship or whether it's through your travel company.
I can give two examples for this. One, through my own travel company. So one of the things, like I said earlier, with my travel company, I try and do is, number one is, of course, the experience, and number two is the purpose. But I think more important is the people connection that you make. Through travel, you not only self-discover about yourself, but also you're able to make connections and build relationships. So I've been working with a school based out of Singapore, actually, Singapore American School. Of course, COVID has put a stop for it, and we're trying to see if we can revive it. But connected the school students with Read Bhutan. By then I had transitioned out of Read, but they call it the service learning trip. And connecting the school students there with the community children in Bhutan. and building a relationship out of that. And it has actually gone beyond just a school trip. SAS has established the Read Bhutan Club. So the students are highly invested, rallying around a cause. And when the students come over to Bhutan, the local students were able to host them, show them around, teach them Bhutanese games, tell them about their lifestyle, talk to them about their aspirations out of the small village in Bhutan. And they also keep in touch through Zoom connections. So they have every now and then they speak to each other through Zoom. But I think, these things, although it may seem quite conventional in some ways that, you make this connection, but you look at the deeper impact it has made, even for our kids. For them, it's their first time they're meeting students that of their age who come from very different contexts. And students teach them American football, and our Bhutanese students teach them about our local games. And for SAS, the students there, I think for them, it really gives a different perspective of life, of children their own age and how different it is. We've been able to do that consecutively for several years. And I said COVID has put a dent, but it's gone beyond just a trip. They're doing programming. As students are supporting the Read Center in which that village is. And then the students, SAS obviously learns a lot from the experienced students in Bhutan. And every time we finish the program, I feel emotionally the SAS students leave Bhutan highly impacted, because the reflection they give us at the end of the Bhutan trip is quite deep and quite touching, moving for them. And secondly, in terms of my social entrepreneurship work and the whole aspect of how sustainable thing we're doing, or at least I'm doing here in Bhutan, is, like I said earlier, I work with a network of young startups and entrepreneurs. So I mentor, and I have also come on board as angel investor to a startup company that does nature positive business. So it's an essential oil company. It's called Kingdom Essences. They work with a group of community-based forest management group. And this is a program through the government because a lot of our communities live in national parks and forests. And because we have strict conservation, we conserve the trees, we conserve biodiversity, but also people live there. And the government's initiative of community-based forest management groups is essentially to have communities in those forests benefit out of the resources that they can sustainably harvest. And the company Kingdom Essences works with a group of community-based forest management groups where and I think Kingdom Essences works with around 45 households, and we source our essential oil raw materials from them. So they go to the forest, forage pine needles, cypress, pine cones.
What really sets you apart from them? What is the uniqueness about your company that stands out?
Yeah, so I think what sets me apart is, I should preface it by saying that I think all tour companies in Bhutan essentially tries to really, because we have a very sustainable tourism policy that guides a lot of what we do in Bhutan. So within that space, it gives us already that good baseline space to work off of. So I think essentially in many ways, a lot of our tour companies function from the platform of sustainability. But to your specific question of what sets me apart, I suppose it's the fact that I really, with intention, I purposefully try and, to the extent possible, because when you're a travel company, you also is a lot of what the clients want.
Yeah.
But to the extent possible, with intention, I design journeys that is just beyond hitting all the cultural sites, but they're able to see an aspect of whether it's the Bhutanese lifestyle or whether it's the Bhutan's journey, but to also help them see our journey has been good, but it doesn't come without challenges.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day, we are carbon negative right now with aspirations and commitment to remain carbon neutral. We have 70% forest cover, but also, what does that mean? What are the sacrifices the community and the people and the country is doing to maintain that? Because it is a beautiful story to tell, but it comes with the challenges that our people, or the sacrifices that our forefathers or people before us and going forward that we have to make to maintain that.
Yes, obviously everyone talks about I think it's called is it the gross national happiness?
Yeah.
Yes. So can you highlight exactly what that is, and what is it? Are the people genuinely happy? Because you just mentioned a few minutes ago that, the concern for the community, because 70% of the country has to be city, and all of that and sustainability is a big focus. What exactly is this happiness index? And are the people truly happy? Just a little background on it will be interesting.
Yeah. Gross national happiness, and for ease of the conversation, let's say GNH, the acronym.
Okay.
GNH is a development philosophy that our fourth king conceptualized in late 70s, early 80s, before the world even knew of the term sustainable development. And it is a very conscious approach by the king to chart a future forth, because he's quite the visionary leader. He's very much loved and revered by Bhutan, and I think the world who knows of him.
Yeah.
Because he knew the times are changing, Bhutan is changing, and as we modernize, we can easily go the extreme path of high growth, the capitalistic growth, all of that, which will bring a lot of material wealth. Yeah. But he knew that Bhutan, we are tiny, we're small, we are a country of 750,000. We'll never be an economic power. We don't have the natural resources like oil. So what we have is our culture, our people, and our lifestyle. And GNH was conceptualized at that time to use it as a guiding philosophy for all future growth that'll happen. And how it has manifested into the policy framework is divided. GNH has 4 pillars, which is good governance, sustainable socio-economic development, spiritual and cultural preservation, and environment preservation or conservation. And all policies and programs go through what we call a GNH screening tool, and that the government does. And we look at if we build a road in this community, how does it impact across these 4 sectors? And I'm giving a very high level thing. So it has to do it in a way that it doesn't highly negatively impact one aspect of the GNH model, but there is going to be some kind of a minimum opportunity cost that's going to happen. But what is it across those 4 sectors, and how will it impact the lives of our people? So our government does the screening tool, and all our programs and policies are screened through what is called the GNH screening tool. And it has served us well. And I think as time changes and as lifestyles change, and also as our involvement in the global space, as it changes, I think what we consider important for us as people also change. So the GNH screening tool and the GNH model is flexible enough to evolve and be practical over years. And to your question of, are Bhutanese people truly happy? And I think that's something that the world latches on. The world just latches on the word happiness. When we speak of GNH, gross national happiness, I think Bhutan never purported us or the Bhutanese people to be the happiest. But I think the world likes the word happiness. So the word happiness gets caught up, and we are always portrayed as the happiest people, which in fact, if you look at the World Happiness Study, we are not. The world's happiest people are the Scandinavian countries, which is essentially also a very welfare economy and country, welfare-based economy and country, but also they are developed countries, so the economies are very mature. But for Bhutan, I would say we are largely a Buddhist country. So from a Buddhist philosophy, it's more of the well-being and the state of mind. So it would be quite unrealistic for us to be happy forever, because only by knowing pain or knowing suffering, we know happiness. It's relative. So for us, I think for the Bhutanese people, it's not necessarily about being the happiest people, but being a community of people that we are pursuing well-being and the sense of contentment, and more importantly, knowing that we have the environment and the space to aspire for what we would like to be.
I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to actually being able to meet you in person when I'm in DC in 3 weeks. So thank you so much. And it's nice to be able to connect with you and get an understanding of your beautiful country, which is a hidden gem, as everyone says. But I'm sure there is a lot in the country that has to be experienced. And I hope that after this conversation, all the people who've been listening in will have Bhutan on their map to go and actually experience the culture and nature. And I think what you've done with Read and with your social entrepreneurship and your tour company and all the things that you're keeping in mind to move forward for Bhutan is absolutely commendable. So thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Now Boarding, a travel podcast. Check out other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. And of course, don't forget to share your thoughts with us. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes only on Now Boarding, a travel podcast.